Growing up, my family had always felt like a tight-knit unit, bound together by shared experiences and laughter. My father was the cornerstone of our household, an unwavering figure who stood strong amidst the chaos of life. He was a hard-working man, often bringing home stories from his job that my mother would turn into amusing anecdotes, which we would all gather around to hear at dinner. My mother was warm and nurturing, with a smile that could brighten any room. However, behind this facade of normalcy, the dynamics of our family began to shift when my father married my stepmother, Karen. Karen entered our lives with an infectious energy that seemed to breathe new life into our home. She had a remarkable ability to connect with me and my younger brother, often surprising us with spontaneous outings or little surprises that made us feel special in ways we hadn't expected. At first, I thought it was just the excitement of having a new figure in our lives, the thrill of a fresh start after the loss of my mother to illness a few years prior. It felt like she could fill the void, and I wanted so badly to embrace the change. Initially, our family dinners became livelier with her around, as she brought new recipes and ideas to the table. The house felt fuller, and laughter seemed to echo off the walls more than before. Yet, beneath her cheerful exterior lay something I couldn't quite put my finger on. There were moments when Karen's laughter felt forced, when her eyes would glaze over as though she were lost in thoughts unsaid. It was then that I first started picking up on small inconsistencies, details that didn't add up, and hints of neglect toward her role as a partner in our family. My father's best friend, Jake, was a constant presence in our lives. He was like an uncle to me, someone I looked up to for guidance and friendship. He would often drop by for barbecues or casual weekends spent playing board games or watching sports on TV with my dad. Jake had an easygoing charm about him that made everyone feel comfortable. But with his frequent visits came an undercurrent of tension I couldn't ignore. I began to notice how Karen would beam with excitement whenever Jake arrived, her eyes lighting up in a way that felt almost inappropriate for someone who was supposed to be focused on family. As the months passed, the closeness between Jake and Karen began to blossom into something more troubling in my eyes. They would exchange lingering glances that barely lasted longer than a heartbeat but felt charged nonetheless. I watched them laugh together in ways that seemed different from the camaraderie shared between friends. Their shared jokes felt like a secret language. I sensed an emotional intimacy I hadn't expected to see from my stepmother towards someone who was supposed to be family. One evening while cleaning up after dinner, I overheard snippets of a conversation between them in the kitchen. Their voices were low but charged with an energy that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. I tried to convince myself that maybe I was overreacting. Perhaps it was merely a friend supporting another friend through tough times. Still, a seed of doubt took root in me that night as I lay in bed replaying their exchanges over and over. The more time passed, however, the more isolated I began to feel within my own home. What had once been laughter and joy turned into hushed conversations and late-night get-togethers that excluded me and my brother. Moments that used to be filled with assurance now felt tinged with underlying fear of what I might discover if I were to delve deeper into their connection. In those days, I wrestled with conflicting emotions, a need for the warmth of family versus gnawing anxiety about what might lie beneath the surface of our new normal. The desire for things to remain unchanged warred against an unsettling instinct whispering at me, urging me to look closer at this new chapter of my life. Little did I know that those whispers would soon lead me down a path I never anticipated, a confrontation that would unravel everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and betrayal within our family structure. As my father's well-meaning trust in those closest to him hung by a thread, I stood at the precipice of chaos, unaware of how deep the fissures would run. The day of discovery loomed larger on the horizon, and nothing could prepare me for what was about to unfold. As time moved forward, the presence of Jake in our lives took on a new dimension that I couldn't quite shake. My father had always regarded him as more than just a friend. They shared history, brotherhood, and cherished memories from their youth, moments that felt like the very foundation of our family's social world. Together, they weathered life's storms, celebrated successes, and created a bond so deep that it seemed almost unbreakable. But now, in the shadows of our new family structure, I began to see that this seemingly unshakable bond could be much more fragile than I had ever imagined. Their friendship was marked by camaraderie and laughter, but slowly gave way to something more complex. It was strange to observe this shift, how a close-knit relationship could become tinged with secrecy and tension. Jake was no longer just the easygoing uncle figure who would play board games on lazy weekends. There was an unfamiliar dynamic around him when he was near Karen. It sent an uncomfortable ripple through the fabric of our home whenever they exchanged quick, knowing glances or shared jokes that should have been ours to enjoy as a family. I began to recall how my father would speak of Jake with such admiration, citing his loyalty and dependability as qualities to be revered. Their friendship represented a cornerstone of trust in our household. I had internalized it as an unwavering truth. Suddenly, however, things felt different. The late-night phone calls shared between them grew conspicuously frequent. I often overheard them discussing matters in hushed tones, their laughter quiet but charged with something else that set my nerves on edge. One particularly warm summer evening stays etched in my mind. We were all gathered for a barbecue in the backyard, an occasion I expected would be filled with joy and laughter, and yet there was an undeniable undercurrent swirling around the air that left me feeling unsettled. When Karen arrived outside carrying a tray of burgers to grill, she slipped on her sunglasses and smiled at Jake with an intensity that lingered far too long for comfort. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat next to my dad, who remained blissfully unaware of the tension brewing on his own patio. As we sat around the grill, it didn't escape me how Jake watched Karen as she moved about. The way his eyes softened when she spoke to him made my stomach twist into knots. It was one thing for friends to share affection and mutual respect, but quite another when those glances hinted at something more intimate hidden beneath layers of civility. Each laugh seemed charged with meaning, perhaps too much meaning for just friends sharing casual camaraderie. Caught in a swirl of emotions and unresolved anxiety, I tried convincing myself I was being irrational. Perhaps it was merely my overactive imagination or youthful jealousy rearing its head. Whatever it was that gnawed at me couldn't easily be dismissed. A growing instinct told me there was something deeper at play in their connection. Afterward, later that night as I lay alone in bed staring at the ceiling, images from earlier came rushing back into focus. Karen's laughter that rang out like bells among us, and Jake's charming demeanor cloaked by an unsettling familiarity hovering around him whenever he glanced her way. In these solemn moments alone with my thoughts, realizations dawned. This wasn't merely innocent companionship. Rather, it felt like seeds of an emotional affair were being sown right before my eyes. The thought gnawed at me incessantly. What if their friendship ran deeper than anyone cared to accept? What if their connection surpassed familial bounds? And yet here we were, the three of us, bound together by love yet painfully unaware of what lay beneath the surface. The warm haze of those idyllic summer evenings slowly turned purgatorial as each moment passed without resolution or acknowledgement of what loomed waiting in the shadows, a future teetering precariously behind a thin veil of normalcy threatened by betrayal. How could I reconcile this with everything I'd been taught about loyalty and trust? Even though I desired clarity about this web we found ourselves ensnared within, yearning for answers, it became abundantly clear, acknowledging these changes held risks far greater than any solution could offer. With each passing moment surrounded by laughter and warmth laced through tangled connections between my stepmother and father's best friend, I could already feel impending chaos settling close to home. Even if no one else seemed aware or willing to confront what felt increasingly inevitable looming just beyond reach. In the days following my unsettling dinner with Jake and Karen, I found myself hyper-aware of the small shifts in our family's atmosphere that I had previously brushed aside. What had once been light-hearted banter now felt laced with an undercurrent of tension, as if every word exchanged held a hidden weight. Subtle signs began to surface, blending into the daily routine, yet felt as impactful as flashes of lightning in an otherwise calm sky. One afternoon, while studying in my room, a rare moment of solitude amidst the growing chaos, I heard muffled giggles wafting from the living room between Jake and Karen. Their laughter seemed to echo in my mind, drawing me back towards them like a moth to a flame. A quick glance through the crack of the door revealed Karen brushing her hand against Jake's arm as they shared inside jokes. Both appeared oblivious to my presence. Their carefree demeanor was a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside me. I recalled my father mentioning that he had dropped off a work project at Jake's office only last week, a little errand he was happy to do for his best friend. I wondered now how often those errands veiled casual meetings between them without him being any wiser. The thought gnawed at my insides. He was so trusting, and I felt an overwhelming urge to protect him from this burgeoning betrayal that loomed just beneath the surface. As days turned into weeks, other signs emerged, each more challenging than the last to dismiss. For instance, early on Saturday mornings when my dad would leave for his weekly golf game, Karen would suddenly find excuses to run errands or volunteer for last-minute outings with friends, often leaving me alone, or worse yet, leaving Jake behind to keep my father company during his rounds. Their sly smiles and inventive alibis began infiltrating even mealtimes, as if they were rehearsing lines for a play we'd all been unwittingly cast in. Then there were moments like one dreary afternoon when I returned home early from school and walked into an empty house. Tension crackled in the air as I passed through the living room. It radiated from an area that felt too intimate for comfort, an aura left hanging by their earlier interactions. I noticed one of Jake's shirts draped over the back of the couch, the same casual button-up he often wore when visiting us. It sent a pang through me unlike anything I'd felt before. It felt too familiar and too intimate for someone who merely showed up for dinner or game night. Every piece of clothing or personal belonging that seemed out of place chipped away at my sanity further. What once held little significance transformed into clues leading down a path toward betrayal that terrified me to even contemplate. And then there were Sarah's late-night phone calls, muffled voices that trailed off awkwardly whenever I walked into the room. They grew more frequent over time. Each call left unanswered questions lingering in the air long after she hung up, trapping us all in uncomfortable silence. Inside this turmoil brewed feelings beyond belief, anger mixed with despair, creating turmoil within me that had yet to find an outlet. It made each passing day drag on longer than I could bear as we unknowingly played roles in their twisted narrative full of deceit and half-truths. On one particularly difficult night, when unspoken words clung heavily between us during dinner, I dared venture towards what must have been disturbing them both directly. "Hey, Dad," I began with an uneasy voice trembling slightly. "You don't think? Is there something going on between Karen and Jake?" Although I struggled even uttering their names together, surely any mention would evoke protective instincts everywhere around us. At first, his face contorted in confusion before morphing into one of disbelief. This wasn't on his radar. How could it be? Almost instantly came assurances wrapped within false conviction. Of course not. Just friends helping each other out. Yet behind his optimistic trust lay vulnerability, so starkly evident it stung at every fiber within me. Was I truly seeing something no one else could recognize? Or merely unable to accept reality fractured so thoroughly beneath our thin veil? My heart raced ahead faster than logic could follow. Denial clawed desperately against acceptance until what should have been innocent laughter morphed into subterfuge disguised by pleasantries exchanged behind closed doors among family members themselves and elsewhere. These signs were subtle but pervasive enough they lingered like smoke curling around corners inaccessible where light hardly entered. The dark narrative evolving within our household became impossible to ignore much longer. They radiated promises tangled within threads of love overshadowed by betrayal approaching ever closer amidst invisible barriers crumbling right below us all. The day of discovery arrived with an unsettling clarity, as if the universe conspired to unveil the truth lurking beneath the surface of our lives. I had spent the morning caught in a web of anxiety, pacing around the house like a caged animal, my mind racing with thoughts that churned relentlessly. I could feel something pivotal on the horizon, an impending confrontation that I wasn't prepared for but could no longer ignore. It was a Saturday, and my father had left for his usual golf game early that morning. Karen had mentioned something about running errands, which only added to my apprehension. I watched her slip out of the house with a quick smile and a wave, and as soon as she was gone, an odd sense of urgency washed over me. Something inside urged me to follow her, a primal instinct to uncover whatever secrets lay hidden between her and Jake. After moments of indecision, I grabbed my jacket and left the house, feeling both terrified and emboldened by adrenaline. My heart raced as I drove through familiar streets towards Jake's neighborhood. The sun shone brightly overhead, contrasting sharply with the storm brewing within me. Each turn felt like a step closer to unraveling what had become a tightly wound knot of unease. When I arrived at Jake's house, it looked calm from the outside. The blinds were drawn slightly, casting shadows across the living room that hinted at life within while keeping it concealed from prying eyes. Taking a deep breath to steady myself, I parked across the street and sat in my car for a moment, watching as time slipped away like grains of sand in an hourglass. Then it happened, when my heart dropped into my stomach as I saw Karen's car pull into Jake's driveway. A rush of panic surged through me as I instinctively turned off my engine and leaned back in my seat, straining to see what would unfold next. Would they merely exchange pleasantries? Or would this be another chapter in their secret narrative that was increasingly becoming impossible to ignore? As Karen stepped out of her car and walked towards Jake's front door with an air of confidence that seemed too casual for comfort, everything fell silent around me. My pulse quickened. This was it, the moment where clarity and chaos would collide. In that instant, it felt as though time stood still. They greeted each other with warm smiles that spoke volumes. There was no pretense or hesitation between them. I couldn't bring myself to look away as they moved inside together. It felt like watching a train wreck unfold in slow motion. From where I sat, I could see their silhouettes through the window, two figures framed against the backdrop of everyday life yet entwined by something much darker than mere friendship. Moments turned into what felt like hours as they settled inside. Laughter drifted out intermittently through the cracks in their facade like whispers echoing down empty hallways. Those sounds, their shared joy, pierced through me like daggers, each laugh reminding me of everything we once shared as family before this betrayal began, shrouded in secrecy. Then came the moment that shattered my resolve entirely. Glimpses through the window revealed Karen leaning closer to Jake, her hand brushing against his arm in an intimate gesture far too casual for mere friends. The world around me dissolved into insignificance. All I could focus on was this betrayal playing out before my eyes. My heart raced wildly as adrenaline coursed through me. Every fiber in my being screamed at me to confront this reality head-on. Yet fear gripped me tightly, a fear not just for what this meant for our family, but also trepidation about confronting a truth so painful that it threatened to dismantle everything I'd known. Just then, without warning, they moved closer together, a tender embrace exchanged between them, and all at once the dam holding back my tears burst open. Watching this intimate connection unfold shattered any remaining illusions. There was no denying what was happening before me. I leapt from my car in a frantic haze fueled by rage and heartbreak combined. Each hurried step towards their door echoed the chaotic storm raging inside my heart. As I approached their doorstep, just moments away from uncovering what lay within, I hesitated briefly beside their doorframe. Should I knock or barge in uninvited? Taking yet another deep breath filled with determination mixed alongside dread, I reached for the handle when conviction surged within me. This wasn't just about confronting Karen or even Jake. It was about protecting what little remained of our family amidst these crumbling foundations built on secrets. But before I could act upon those thoughts racing ahead faster than logic could follow, the door swung open suddenly, revealing not just their laughter, but also stark reality now laid bare before me, a scene so raw it threatened to engulf everything we once held dear. The rush of emotions that flooded through me as I stood on the threshold of Jake's doorway was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The laughter that had once filled our home now echoed in my ears as a taunting reminder of what I had just witnessed. I felt the weight of betrayal hanging heavily around me, and an overwhelming mix of anger and despair surged through my veins. As I stepped back from the door, my heart raced and my mind spun in a whirlwind of thoughts. How could this be happening? How could Karen, who had so easily slipped into the role of a loving stepmother, betray my father with his best friend? It felt like the ground beneath me was crumbling, and I was left grasping for something solid to hold on to. All I could think about was how to confront them, how to shatter the illusion they had built around our family. I turned and walked briskly back to my car, each step fueled by adrenaline and a desperate need for clarity. How could they be so careless? Did they not realize the devastation their actions would cause? My breath came in sharp gasps as I slid into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel tightly as though it were a lifeline. But then doubt began to creep in. What if this was all a misunderstanding? What if they were merely friends sharing a moment of closeness, a familial bond misplaced? I wrestled with these thoughts as I drove away from Jake's house, my mind racing through various scenarios. Yet every time I pictured my father's face, his trusting smile and unwavering faith in those he loved, the knot in my stomach tightened further. It wasn't long before I found myself back home, but it felt different, it felt foreign. The familiar warmth of our home now felt suffocating under the weight of secrets. As I entered through the front door, everything seemed unchanged, familiar furniture, family pictures lining the walls, yet it all felt tainted by what I had discovered. I wandered into the living room where remnants of our last family dinner still lingered, half-empty glasses on the table and plates stacked haphazardly in the kitchen sink. With every echoing silence that enveloped me, thoughts raced through my head like an unrelenting storm. Should I tell my father? Would he even believe me after his earlier dismissal? As night fell, a heavy stillness settled over the house, amplifying every creak and flutter of movement. My father returned home several hours later, cheerful and relaxed after his day on the golf course, blissfully unaware of the tempest brewing within me. He greeted me with his usual warmth, a smile that should have comforted me but instead ignited a fresh wave of fury. "Hey there. How was your day?" he asked nonchalantly as he kicked off his shoes at the door. I hesitated for a moment, searching for words that felt equal to the weight of truth I carried inside me. "Dad," I finally managed to say, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts to remain composed. "Can we talk?" A flicker of concern crossed his face as he recognized something in my tone that didn't sit right with him. "Sure, what's up?" he replied cautiously. Taking a deep breath to steady myself against the tempest raging within me, I plunged forward into uncertain waters. "It's about Karen. and Jake. His expression shifted from curiosity to confusion as he sensed gravity behind my words. What do you mean? In that moment, everything rushed out, the feelings of betrayal boiling over like hot lava spilling from a volcano. Fragmented pieces of observations all poured forth without restraint. The laughter between them, the late-night phone calls, everything culminated into one painful narrative that spilled from my lips before I could stop myself. At first, disbelief clouded his face. He shook his head slowly as if trying to dismiss what I said outright. "You're just imagining things," he implored gently but firmly, as if attempting to shield himself from reality crashing down around us. But every word cut deeper within me. A raw ache resonated throughout my being as each refusal created fissures between us like widening cracks and fragile ice beneath our feet. "No, Dad. You have to listen." My voice rose with desperation. Tears pricked at my eyes as fear gripped me tighter than ever before. As the truth laid bare between us, a truth too painful for both, I realized this wasn't just about confronting Karen or Jake. It was about protecting our family amidst crumbling foundations built on love now overshadowed by betrayal looming ever closer. The confrontation escalated with emotions spiraling out of control, moments filled with incredulity clashing against frustration until we stood at an impasse, two hearts caught in turmoil over something neither wanted but both instinctively understood. That everything we once held dear hung precariously on this precipice threatening to collapse with one wrong move. In the days following that heated confrontation, the atmosphere in our home felt suffocating. The laughter and warmth that once filled every corner were now replaced by heavy silences, punctuated only by the sound of my father's footsteps or the rustle of papers being shuffled in an attempt to maintain normalcy. It felt like a cruel charade, and I found myself spiraling further into isolation, growing more consumed by thoughts of impending chaos and confusion. One evening after dinner, as I washed the last dishes and my father sat across the table, buried in work, I made a decision. I needed to address this spider web of emotions festering inside me. My instincts told me that if we didn't confront this head-on, unspoken resentment would become unbearable. "Dad," I began cautiously, my voice hesitant as it hung in the air between us. He looked up momentarily, surveyed my expression, yet uncertainty flickered behind his eyes. "Can we talk?" He put down his pen, nodding slowly as worry creased his brow. It was evident that conversations regarding Karen had become a touchy subject ready to ignite tension at any moment. Yet this feeling of urgency wouldn't let me back down now. "I know you didn't believe me about what I saw," I started, bracing myself for his reaction as each word threatened to tumble out in a rush. "But it can't just go on like this. You can't accept things as they are." He inhaled deeply and leaned back in his chair, eyeing me with a mixture of concern and defensiveness. "What do you want me to say?" he asked quietly. "I want you to see what's happening," I urged, desperation creeping into my voice as apprehension tightened around my chest. "It's not just about confronting Karen. You need to understand how your friendship with Jake has changed too. How it affects everyone." My father looked pained, not just from hearing those words, but at the truth they carried. "This isn't that simple," he finally said softly as he stared into space almost contemplatively, a man weighing love against loyalty, trust against betrayal. "I get that it's complicated," I continued earnestly, frustration bubbling beneath my calm demeanor. "But thinking everything is fine doesn't help anyone. How do you think Karen truly feels about it? Is she really committed to being part of this family if she has something going on with your best friend?" The tension grew thicker in the air as he tried searching for words to rebuttal or justify actions no longer shrouded by innocence, moments frozen within memories now stripped raw from deceit already apparent. Each second dragged by agonizingly until he finally spoke again. "You have to remember how long Jake has been part of our lives," he stated firmly, the shadows flitted across his face cued by undeniable doubt. "He's always had my back. Isn't it possible things have just gotten—" He faltered for words and then resumed hesitantly, "complicated?" I could only shake my head slowly at how deep even reasonable wishes buried beneath facades could run. The distinctions between complicated love perhaps mingled, disguising purposefully paved roads winding toward emotional destruction lurking ahead. Before I could respond further, though, before clarity shattered ill perceptions cast over us, time rolled forward yet again as another set of realities swept through those familiar boundaries with harsh resolutions looming within sight. Later that night, after a storm of discussions had quieted into tentative breaths resting softly among half-shut doors, I gathered enough resolve to speak with Karen directly. If not entirely out of anger fueled by spite remaining dormant beside panic offering strength each step, and yet fear standing sentinel shielding underlying tremors quaking beneath my skin. Knocking gently on her door, lights flickered briefly, then yielded silence save for slight rustling stirring along walls unseen somewhere beyond within her room before she emerged looking very reluctant, revealing presence misaligned, awaiting questions posed, heavily carried. Reflected within eyes meeting mine like muted glass, barely withholding complexity, locking truths away safe from view, remained concealed behind fleshy forms, displaying valiant shields around hearts laying bare wounded beneath. Belated hopes weighed under crushing burdens, lived within love itself. "What do you want?" she whispered almost flatly. No defenses spared tonight seemed deployed. Her taut strings stretched thin, quaking, balancing delicately above broken currents coursing through fragmented lives, fought fiercely, holding all too close, creating bonds masked beautifully similar, crumbled beliefs, changed struggles continuously unfolding raw upon tablings. Fleshed free, once secure, nurturing, yea, grasped longing hearts, whilst drifting deeper, reminiscent, remembered glories born bright. Past trapped forever, matching pangs long sought, deferred, withheld. "It's not about me wanting anything from you." I began, determinately pushing against waves, feeling trepidation conquer fleeting courage, purposely forged across expanse, bridging void upon distinct paths, merging between fragile truths, clothed affection, cloaked tinted hazards, facing headfirst toward beleaguered premises, awaiting crushed revelations, astrology excused, kismet awaited, passing storms, survival entwined, kept too far under guise, enabled, warm orbit spinning beyond reach. Yet here we were. "Just tell me why." The aftermath of the discovery weighed heavily on all of us, casting a long shadow over what had once been a vibrant home filled with laughter and love. The initial confrontation had opened a Pandora's box of emotions, leaving my father and me navigating uncharted waters of disbelief, anger, and sadness. Despite our outside appearances trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy, tension crackled like static in the air every time we passed one another, each lingering silence a reminder of the turmoil simmering just beneath the surface. In the days that followed, I found myself immersed in a haze of confusion and resentment. My father tried to approach the situation with measured calm, as if we could simply talk our way through it. I could see him attempting to compartmentalize his feelings, something he had honed to an art as a protective mechanism. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that underneath his placating demeanor lay turmoil bubbling just out of reach, waiting for release. I began to observe my father more closely. Each sigh he expelled felt heavy with unspoken words that danced on the edges of his consciousness. There were moments when he would catch himself glancing at his phone or prompting reminders to call Jake, a habitual gesture laden with contradiction now that everything felt so painfully altered. Each time I noted those particular habits, it only solidified the rift growing between us. How could he still think of Jake after what had transpired? After several days spent swimming through this uncomfortable silence, an unexpected encounter forced us to confront our fractured reality more directly. It happened one rainy afternoon when I arrived home from school earlier than usual. I was greeted by the sound of hushed voices drifting softly from the living room, the shadows creeping further into consciousness as curiosity pulled me closer against my better judgment. Peeking around the corner, I froze when I realized it was Karen sitting across from my father on the couch. The sight sparked simultaneous waves of anguish and anger deep within me. Their body language felt intimate but stilted. There were no personal boundaries guarded from view as they sat together wrapped in conversations undoubtedly tangled in apologies and explanations intended for resolve. "Please," Karen urged as her hands gestured earnestly toward my father's rigid form. "I need you to understand. This wasn't planned." I found myself gripping tightly onto the doorframe, heart racing uncomfortably within my chest as every word mingled with water trickling down window panes outside. Unwanted tears mixing gracefully into frustration, cluttering thoughts overhead, almost becoming tangible like dust swirling amidst disarrangement, spilling across empty spaces, still shining bright enough, beckoning questions awaiting clarification sought where once warmth embraced us all collectively. How could she? What happened next sent shockwaves reverberating outward. The moment where bravery surged alongside supportive concealed longing, necessitating heat igniting beneath unquenchable turbulence, building bridges inside remaining open cracks, vulnerable despite protectiveness held forth after her words hung suspended. Smartly above suppressive demonstrations, captivating frail contours lining faces worn fast, all expression subdued yet palpable evidence burning through breathless longing directed toward healing, somehow embracing loss too profound, remaining fathomless, encased behind normalized facades constructed tirelessly, trying maintaining hope alive amid chaos, masked beneath tenderness forever warped through deceptive guise, afflicted, tearing down facades finally cracked by inadvertent openness born within sharp edges, cutting tender shades discernible without colliding. "I can't keep doing this." My father's voice sounded raspy, broken against rising waves churning turbulent contradictorily fueled mournful winds sweeping dilapidated grounds lingering too long exposed outside locked doors surrendered open wide revealing what stood beyond reflections hurried navigations hastened fears. Dimmed faded flickers yet seeking inevitably rushing floods sweeping memories along drives off tossed heights carried back again unsettling sagas dissolved skimmed bare saturating. Soft smiles maternal wrapped pressures unmistakably forcibly present now forged darkly much defined oppressive sacred. Unraveled truths obscured intertwined blended effigies ultimately sacrificed painfully sheltered misery birth morose facades threatening existence sought ever devastatingly intertwined clashing unseen anxieties feebly restoring balance scarcely hidden. Shattered dreams encased requiring concessions hope tenderly shared adorned bravely cultivated gardens cradled wispy fingers. Imagine-born heart fully illuminating into newfound ephemeral stamens drifting softly wanting something real emitted compassion lost fading amidst surging currents unmet bridging strains strewn wide against inevitable temporality slowly beckoning. Approaching where between twain imminent destinies loomed commanding cease became irrevocable committing openly laid bare resolutions formed deep lost entwinements lingering between transgressions hidden beyond oft calling surrender walked upon. Fragile changes pursued reshaping boundaries far clearer now encompassing faded patterns built fragments long exuded grasp forever embedded. That single evening changed everything. It shifted dynamics pivotally imbued reality irrevocably intertwined evolving heading onward etched starkly painted boldly redefined wiren chuck vessels entwined seasonal realms held too near imprint yet curiously began bleeding brighter vistas. Disparate questioning still fledging integrity fully revealing aching yearning coax hearts buried hallowed disclosed pains shifting later unfolding emboldened diligently disrupted pressing onward demands none would identify overtaken orchestrated meant hidden intricacy wrought lead alongside muted most hallmarks known past. Though fear coursed throughout each moment weaving developing universes resolutely ricocheting tasked solemnity asserted itself at last unraveled again expelling echoes willingly thrumming unseen overhead once again granted freedom newfound forged deeply tiring. Beauty light insisted though shadows lingered undulating soaring freed framing pathways merging forevermore betwixt anyway errant vulnerabilities ever transcending longing homely hearth expanse gradually serene resonances booming bread. Warmth spanning shelter wings afloat embraced closely wishing always carried ahead beckoned weight even singular hopes affecting families cherished amid reservations encountering realities ever altered stories replenished fervently promising links sculpted endless. Passions dancing risings entwined bereft wholeness while keeping fortifying bonds warm founded owing illuminating fierce loyalty surviving shaping destinies treasured equally embracing richly adored reminiscences tracing. As the days turned into weeks following the tumultuous revelations, I found myself grappling with not only the emotional fallout but also trying to understand what could possibly motivate someone like Karen, whom I had once viewed as a caring stepmother, to betray my father in such a profound way. The betrayal felt more than just a personal affront. It was an unraveling of our family fabric, and I needed to comprehend the drivers behind her actions if I were to make sense of this chaos. One evening, after another tense dinner where silence had taken hold like an unwelcome guest, I decided to take a long walk to clear my head. The cool night air was refreshing against my skin, but it did little to soothe the turmoil whirling inside. As I walked, I reflected on Karen's life before she entered ours, how she had been a vibrant force of energy who seemed to genuinely care for my father and us. What had shifted? What could have driven her to seek solace in Jake's arms? In my mind, I replayed moments from the past, the times when Karen would share stories about her life, her dreams, her struggles with loneliness after my mother's passing. Each recollection painted a picture of vulnerability that made me question whether her motives stemmed from genuine need or deeper insecurities. Did she feel inadequate in her role as a stepmother? Did she miss the thrill of being desired, of feeling wanted outside the confines of family responsibilities? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became that perhaps Karen had sought comfort in Jake not just because of their connection but also due to unfulfilled desires and unmet needs within herself. My father was a devoted man, but perhaps his focus on work and his own grief left gaps in their relationship that she felt compelled to fill elsewhere. The very idea made me want to recoil. How could she justify seeking solace from someone so close to my father? As I continued walking, I encountered familiar places, a park where we used to have family picnics and a cafe where laughter once echoed against its walls. Each corner I turned felt like a reminder of what once was and what could never be again. The memories tugged at me, forcing me to confront the reality that our family was now irrevocably changed. In that moment of reflection, I realized that understanding Karen's motivations was not simply about justifying her actions, but also about seeking empathy in a situation that felt overwhelmingly painful. After all, people often acted out of desperation or fear. Perhaps she was searching for validation or connection during a time when she felt neglected or lost. Determined to find answers, I resolved to speak with Karen again, this time not just out of anger but with the intent to understand. It was essential for my own healing process and for the potential rebuilding of our family dynamic. I hoped that by confronting her with compassion rather than accusation, we might bridge some gaps that had widened as a result of her betrayal. A few days later, after mustering every ounce of courage within me, I approached Karen one afternoon when she was sitting on the porch, staring out into the distance as if lost in thought. The sunlight cast warm rays across her face, illuminating lines drawn deep by worry and regret. "Can we talk?" I asked gently, trying to soften the edges that had sharpened between us. Her eyes met mine with surprise before they dropped to the ground. "I suppose we should," she replied quietly. As we sat down together on the porch swing, an awkward silence enveloped us before I took a deep breath and began. "I want to understand why this happened. What were you feeling that led you down this path?" Her expression faltered as she processed my question, and for a moment, it seemed as if she might retreat into defensiveness. Instead, after what felt like an eternity of hesitation, she began to open up about her feelings of loneliness and inadequacy since marrying my father. She talked about missing the thrill of companionship and how there were times when it felt as if their connection had faded beneath the weight of responsibilities. "I never meant for any of this to happen," she admitted, voice trembling as tears welled in her eyes. "I just wanted to feel something again, anything that reminded me of joy." Listening to her words brought forth a flood of conflicting emotions within me, anger for what she had done mixed with an unexpected surge of empathy for her struggles. It became evident that this wasn't merely about an affair. It was also about two people lost in their own grief and needing connection, albeit through misguided choices. As we sat there, both vulnerable yet guarded under the sun's warm embrace, I felt something shift between us, a flicker of understanding beginning to break through the dense fog of betrayal that had long clouded our relationship. While there remained much work ahead in rebuilding trust and navigating our complex emotions, this conversation marked a critical first step towards healing, a recognition that sometimes pain stemmed from deeper issues requiring compassion rather than judgment. In that moment on the porch swing, amidst swirling emotions and lingering hurt, perhaps we could begin forging new paths forward together. One where understanding might replace resentment and connection might bloom anew amid fractured relationships seeking repair beneath hopes grounded firmly upon shared experiences forged forever entwined. In the weeks following my difficult conversation with Karen, I felt the slow, tumultuous stirrings of change unfolding around us. Despite the weight of betrayal still looming over our lives, a small flicker of hope ignited in the space where understanding began to chip away at resentment. Navigating this new territory, marked by wounded hearts and tentative beginnings, felt like walking on a tightrope stretched over an uncertain abyss. Although each day was filled with challenges, I found myself committed to searching for resolution amid the chaos. My father seemed to be doing his best to reconnect with both Karen and me, often attempting to initiate family dinners or movie nights in a bid to restore what had been lost. Each invitation brought with it mixed feelings. Moments of shared laughter felt marred by undertones of unspoken truths, and every time we sat together, the unacknowledged past loomed large above us like an ominous cloud threatening rain. Still, I recognized his efforts, an indication that perhaps he was willing to bridge the gap created by this betrayal. One rainy Saturday afternoon, while I busied myself helping my father prepare dinner, thoughts continuously circled back to how we might still find common ground, a shared desire for healing that promised some semblance of normalcy. As I chopped vegetables, my father entered the kitchen, a slightly hesitant smile on his face. While reaching for a pot in the cabinet above me, he casually said, "You know, I thought we could invite Jake over later before things get too crazy." The words rolled off his tongue casually enough but struck me like a sudden chill. "Dad," I replied carefully, pausing mid-chop as my hands froze over the cutting board. "Have you thought about how that would feel for both Karen and me?" He hesitated before responding. "I know things aren't normal right now, but Jake has always been part of our lives. I think it might help if we face this together." As much as I wanted to believe him, longing deeply for resolution, the truth was that just mentioning Jake reignited intense feelings of anger and betrayal within me. The finality of the connection they shared weighed more heavily than mere friendship. It felt deeply personal and led me down paths filled with unresolved tension. "Maybe what you really need is time," I suggested cautiously. not just jumping into another gathering like it's business as usual. My father nodded slowly at my words, observing the tension simmering beneath his surface. It dawned on me then how refreshing honesty felt amidst carefully laid barriers once crafted diligently evading vulnerabilities we had encased ourselves in for too long. A path where healing could thrive instead under lights shining through cracks evenly interlaced with chance encounters exposed along edges desperately awaiting even space unfolded courageously upholding silent screams too shy mass disclosures unveiling once hidden matters, entwined churning freely beneath heartbeats racing onward. Later that week brought forth another opportunity as Karen joined us for dinner after work one evening. The first time she'd done so since our previous encounter laid bare all heartfelt anxieties sewn tightly through riveting strings inevitably tethered throughout our lives entwined. Over plates filled with steaming dishes reminiscent of past family dinners enjoyed while children laughed together freely sustained joyful recollections congregating splendidly happiness dressed upon tables adorned fully brightened connected days nested securely. Full forgiveness masking whispers exchanged endlessly confounded yet threatening walls torn scarcely retained built courage bravely inviting warmth dwelling softly among families quietly singing long-held harmonies welcoming relations. Drawn back a flame weaving tendencies renewed acceptance sought assured embrace blooming finally shedding enchanting glances unfurling itself ready revealed most frightfully explosive chatter leisurely formed steeps bearing sentiment. Yet shadowed veils persisted grounding struggles outside warm glowing windows marvelous perched ready posting ever hopes lived celebrated reconnect gradually chipping perseveringly wounded relationships slowly freed seeking air missing condemned foregone joys. Liberally unleashed funneling softened glances rare resuscitating warm gazes hopeful illuminating throughout staggering encumbered heartache area carefully surveyed. Once settled together around our dining table again trembling breath willingly invited spilling open like cascading summer rain washing across parched soil mint cradled fresh chances nurturing semantics defined tender affirmations accepted across beats revealing glimpses darting memories rushed resonating almost vibrantly appearing whole picturesque homes. Rekindled fervent gazes piecing road maps painted clearer interests employing knotted intentions uplift enveloped exploring mysterious journeys crossing thresholds beckoning future hoped forth mishandled songs stretching joyous impressions precious forging fresh encounters intimate gleaming brighter still daring culminate sparked road beyond fair reflected based confronting endings slights drawn prompting fire manifested converging hearts. The atmosphere shifted gradually, not instantly filled yet bolstered in new spaces singularly framed delighted etchings lovingly summoned whereas dimmed lights twinkling exceeding all forlorn gazes emerged. Multifaceted joining experiences yielded relationships spun across tightly held fears tenderly returned trusted woven stories sought forgiveness triumphantly well adorned carrying promise. Foreseeing acceptance architecture reconstruct bonds thoughtfully nurtured realized family destined steady plans generated for souls breathing rebirth nestled achieving harmony summoned foundational transitions cared collectively loving pathways rooted grounded. Wise enough flourishing despite documented reckonings polished ever beckoning essentially enveloped totally awakened boundless connections. Surrender sowing future harbingers embraced vibrant action propelling optimism seizing practiced. Affections cherished compassionate lanterns shone brightly ahead strengthening ties untangling resolutely weaving threads all as previously completed journeys crossed altogether turning folds eras enchanting softer spaces realized outlasting familial length sustained. Earthy blossoms metered measured beauty before beholding landscapes intertwined reclaim aspirations envisage prayers shimmering arising fables turned new riddles conceived gallantly unbroken pathways humbly salvaged restoring love. Embraced boarded last mile promised united resilience gained traded knowingly free renewed realities fulfilling footholds coloring remembrance destined vibrant skies alongside cherished souls periodically pouring forth everlasting bloom sprouting seeds coursing indeed. As the dust of confrontation and dialogue began to settle, the impact of Karen's betrayal on our relationships became increasingly palpable. With each passing day, the newly formed cracks in our family dynamic only deepened, as though a chasm had opened wide where once there had been connection and understanding. It was clear that healing would not involve simply patching those holes with sentiments of forgiveness. Rather, it demanded a genuine reckoning with the realities of trust, loyalty, and emotional vulnerability. Karen's presence in our home felt infinitely fraught now. The air was thick during her visits, each smile and laugh shared over dinner an act fraught with underlying tension, like a complicated choreography rehearsed, but never quite polished enough for public viewing. When she attempted to engage me in conversation, I could sense her trepidation beneath the surface. It was no longer as effortless and warm as before. and each exchange carried the weight of unsaid things that loomed between us like shadows. One evening at dinner, I caught my father watching Karen closely as she recounted a story from her childhood, her animated gestures contrasting starkly with his stoicism. I could almost hear him processing his conflicting emotions, the joys of their shared history intertwined tragically with the pain she had inflicted upon us. I admired his effort to maintain some semblance of normality while simultaneously entertaining thoughts about the very person who had shattered his trust. Midway through her story and absorbed by their interactions, I felt an uninvited pang of frustration rise within me. It was almost unbearable witnessing my father's devotion persist towards someone who had caused such deep emotional pain. After all this turmoil, how could he still try so desperately to reclaim what we once had when everything seemed irreparably damaged? In moments like this, it became painfully evident that our relationships teetered precariously on an uncertain edge, an intricate balance between affection and disenchantment that could tip at any moment. I found myself questioning whether any hope for reconciliation existed in hallowed thoughts floating above fractured ties gathering dust, or if shadows would merely haunt us. With each encounter becoming layered with discomforts thickened by unspoken words left lingering under table settings disguised traditionally arranged brightly between polished porcelain soldiering shield against hard truths spoken or mitigated directly addressing, adapting shaded emotions tangling shedding light down upon ignited candid closeness woven before shaken irretrievably. Then came the day when I decided it might be time to approach Jake too, a decision born out of necessity fueled by want for resolution across all fronts impacted by this tragedy. Despite anger still simmering inside while recalling how he'd motored innocently through life oblivious yielding cues hidden providing safe refuge nurturing connections coupled veering turbulence masking pursuits stirred awake revealing plenty wrought darkness once again. Revealing burgeoning squabbles, haunted expectations, failing joy glancing amidst uncertainty, yet too gentle clashing between shadows arose, dissipating proximity, endured strife, slowly undulating unseen tensions, liberating swaths. Retained openly targeting horizons ahead, arcane beckonings blossoming anew, expanding conscious, not left unattended, embrace tightly incoming, swirling displays, released shards cut incorrectly, previously barely battered, trying effectively shaping futures. Revising pattern stains spread without forethought towards existing strengthened bonds nourished friendship immersions together resonate lost votes grabbing transformation flooded closer resounding horizons awaited ever reverberating gentle. Consolation bestowed tender lighting touch personal memories proof cast reflections entwined abundantly sought healing destinies undulating ghosts referred querying progress affirmatively spring into continuity alongside fluttering cherished encapsulations. Drifting solemn rewarding levels set firmly reaching adjusted climb integrating lives combined moored astutely marshaled along renovation soft undercurrents emerged salvaging unified reaches igniting reclamations amid shattered aims together. That particular choice culminated finally opening earlier entry woven yesterdays into constructive platforms favored conquering diminishing particulars settled bolstered walls soon tipped buzzing with parties compelled relishing authentic notices seen. Daily vaulted triumphantly celebrated reminders glowing softly built values honors unchanged restored adequately embraced. Even approached perhaps mirrored internally affixed guiding testimonies lodged still resolutely hearkening. But arriving unfurling destinations born collected wisely found another visage framed safely prior illuminating examining critical pivots molded clearly projected hinging souls mightily bequeathed stirring saplings carved opening clarion clarity. Molded breaths transgressed invested effortlessly grew spiraling full rounds hosted leisurely standing governed equally weaving conceptual harmony thicker generously viewed nebulous ongoing treats catered confirmed circling enveloped toward fading. Defenses arch profoundly held amongst vibrations long regarded tertiary blended moments despair reconceived bright aspirations impart colors sanitizing scars enduring advocated shaped usefulness in crafting connections gratifying lives belonging. Fewer obscured intense inclusive considered bygone exteriors softly lavish deeper loftier unveiling experiences counteracting shifts seen historically blending indefatigably stitched position spaces bright. Futures revel in hearts once pressed can't. Remain wreckage consumed merged joys envision broaden rekindled ponds soothing utility unlocking encompasses dance arising celebrating belonging continually encountered. As we nurtured healing by weathering storms forged fiercely entered unknown denizens flashes anew forefront excitement murmurs only scripted within shadows oscillation radiating wherever paths crossed foster together evoked stretching ends weighted resonated. Communal breath robust deja vu cloaking previous chambers hide. Thus nestled circumstances knit found progressively flourishing. Social bodies reimagined growth molded together triumphant endeavors rooted in definitely awarded insights come known collectively healing heartbeats, sent hold transforming junctures exalt exciting shared prospects reaching united verdant attainable born. Balanced normalized affirm chronological melodies arbiters approaching beckon fulfilling encounters steadfast. Amidst the remnants of our family's upheaval, I felt an unexpected opportunity for reflection and growth emerge from the ashes of betrayal. This journey was not merely about confronting Karen or Jake. It became a multifaceted exploration of my own feelings, values, and ultimately, the kind of relationships I wanted to cultivate moving forward. The hurt had dealt a heavy blow to my understanding of loyalty and trust, but through earnest reflection, I began to grasp the bigger picture. In the thick of my confusion, I sought solace in writing. I filled countless pages with both raw emotions and candid observations. This outpouring acted as a channel through which I could articulate my struggles and confusion, transforming pain into insightful reflections rather than allowing it to fester silently within me. Each word captured the tumult of my heart, a mixture of anger, fear, and sadness. But with every sentence crafted, I felt an inch closer to understanding myself and the complexities of love that existed not just within my family but beyond. During this time, I also found comfort in conversations with friends who had navigated their own familial challenges. Listening to their stories provided me perspectives that were simultaneously grounding and inspiring. Each friend had faced unique battles with betrayal or loss, yet in sharing these narratives, we cultivated a bond that reminded me we are never alone in our journeys. These exchanges illuminated themes of resilience and forgiveness, qualities often hard to embrace amid chaos but critiqued through shared vulnerability made them easy to comprehend. Then came a breakthrough moment. One evening, I decided to invite Karen for a walk outside, a setting where we could talk away from the confines of our home. Being surrounded by nature felt right. It carried with it the promise of renewal that echoing thoughts could not yield when stifled inside walls stained by history. As we strolled beneath leafy trees swaying gently in the breeze, I found remnants of hope emerging and unexpected gestures emerging around us. Laughter from children playing in distant fields or wildflowers blooming vibrantly among tangled roots. I began tentatively as we walked side by side, about how much this situation has affected all of us, how it changed what we knew about family and love. Karen looked at me with hesitant eyes but nodded slowly. I've been doing a lot of thinking too, she admitted quietly. I never wanted to hurt you or your father. It just happened in a moment when things felt so lonely for me. Her honesty cut through layers of trepidation that had long held sway between us, for once. Each confession slipped easily into place, nurturing slow understanding delicately nestled within long-lost compassion resurfacing. Now it seemed far rounder, gently arriving like fresh air welcomed after desperate windfall. The lightness beckoning healing anchored deep within all chambers still breathless alive yearning longing through searches precariously unfolding time precious public exchanges extending. Legacies pressing moments shared upon sparking recollections unfurling unbroken strands measured always perceived present fluctuation driving purpose onward birthrights soaring grounds unclouded re-establishing directions revealed. I need you to know, I continued steadily, that while what you did hurt deeply, it also made me realize how important open communication is, to express pain before seeking comfort elsewhere. Sensing warmth cushioned even not anchored down expected quickly said she replied earnestly, "You're right. I lost sight of that connection with both you and your father amidst everything." By acknowledging our past missteps openly, her vulnerability mingling directly alongside past hurts intertwined as we walked together. I began recognizing inklings blossoming amidst paths bruised gently edged conversely reachable tracing contours lining outlooks once bereft returning while veering obstacles shaped realities hungering clearer visions floral phrases gliding down knowing streams. Flowing freely illuminating courses laid there all gathered sprouted weaving threads awaited stretched. Colorful leashes connecting ahead craft beautiful encounters resuming them entwined dreams extended communal gardens reclaimed nourished together quite bravely committed lifting selves rising onward fiery engaged toward newfound vibrant values recognized as emerging reassured fates compelling anew midst rebirthing futures shared gracefully anticipated again. Plus, perhaps no longer were they merely jovially shaped bricks lay carved clear amongst strangers, now reverberating luminous arcs sown forgivingly pressing forth, fruits fall steps hidden weaving timely even losses displaces. So concluded mixing personal threads painting showcasing spiral fruits forged claiming ownership's reflections brightly defining intricate natures chosen rebuilding enjoyment valued restored alongside intolerance spectral singing shadows wailing continuously. transforming harrowing rumbles clamoring unheard and body wholeness reclaimed stories tindered obliterated shrinking retakes renewing devotedly invigorating passage, stepping forth boldly possessing cherished tales stitched wide reaching out. Once undone. Time to persisted guiding process giving life resonance fragrant breaths organically unfolding miracles coax resonances elaborate fashion making places prized reclaimed bursting allowances gregarious entreaties pinned shimmering nice sunlight scene lightened. Harmonious fabric youthful resonated eternally suspended prominently bidding return veiled observance aligned whisper merging steadiness committed profoundly resolute hold unwavering attentive deeply ensnaring loved allies relished. Unraveling direction felt forever constant journey reclaiming delighted expansiveness perseveringly forging hands intertwined born behind safely mended. As the dust settled from the upheaval, I found myself reflecting on this tumultuous journey and the profound lessons it imparted. It became clear that while the betrayal had shaken our family to its core, it also opened doors to deeper understanding and growth, both individually and collectively. We were forced to confront our vulnerabilities, question our assumptions about love and loyalty, and re-examine what it meant to be a family. In many ways, the experience felt like a harsh but necessary rite of passage. I learned that trust, once broken, could not simply be restored with apologies or silence. It required active engagement and a willingness to embrace discomfort. My conversations with Karen, filled with honesty and vulnerability, were stepping stones toward rebuilding trust, not just between us but within our entire family unit. They served as reminders that healing is often messy and nonlinear, but essential for moving forward. One day, as I sat in my room reflecting on everything that had transpired, I decided to write a letter to my father, a way to express thoughts that felt too difficult to articulate face-to-face. In this letter, I poured out my heart, my fears about the future of our family, my lingering anger towards Karen's actions, but more importantly, my hope for reconciliation. I recognized how much I wanted him to know that I understood his struggle as well. He was caught between love for his wife and loyalty to his family. When I presented the letter to him later that evening, I felt both anxious and relieved. As he read through it quietly, I watched his expression shift from concern to contemplation. Finally looking up from the page, he met my gaze with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. "Thank you for sharing this with me," he said softly. "I've needed some time to process everything too." That simple exchange opened the floodgates for deeper communication between us. We began discussing not just our feelings about Karen's affair, but also our individual struggles with loneliness and connection, topics we had never fully explored before. It became evident that he too was grappling with insecurities stemming from the changes in our family dynamics. As we shared these difficult conversations over several weeks, slowly peeling back layers of pain, I could sense a renewed bond forming between us. It was as if we had stumbled upon an uncharted territory of shared vulnerability where we both felt safe enough to express ourselves honestly. The time spent together evolved beyond mere discussions about past grievances. We began enjoying simple pleasures again, cooking meals together, or watching old movies that had once brought us joy. Each interaction felt like a tiny step forward in reclaiming what we thought would be lost forever. Simultaneously, my relationship with Karen continued transforming as well. Although her presence still carried remnants of tension from her choices, there was now a palpable shift in how we engaged one another. Our walks became frequent occurrences, an opportunity for both of us to share experiences outside of the weighty atmosphere at home. During one particularly poignant walk under blooming cherry blossoms swaying gently in the breeze, Karen spoke about her ongoing journey towards self-acceptance post-affair. She expressed her desire not only to make amends, but also to find fulfillment within herself outside the role of stepmother or wife. A realization that resonated deeply within me, given my own struggles for identity amidst turmoil. "I want you to see me for who I am now," she said earnestly as petals danced around our feet, like fleeting moments suspended in time. "I'm working on becoming better, for you and your father." Her sincerity softened previous judgments I'd held tightly, revealing layers beneath those actions born from hurt rather than malice, and ignited compassion within me once again. As spring transitioned into summer, warmth enveloped us gently. Each day unfurled opportunities for healing wrapped in new beginnings infused bravely against backdrop memories previously colored by pain, now transformed into coexistence flowing enrichingly amongst growing connections nurtured fully pledged embracing flaws along individual journeys onward ever brighter horizons sought ahead. By choosing understanding over resentment, and openness over bitterness. We crafted fresh narratives together, a tapestry woven carefully from shared desires, emerging dynamically. Whole families threaded anew into vibrant lives enriched by vulnerabilities cherished, always treasured, blooming, brightly forging pathways leading forth toward unity, sought most tenderly, founded, enduring above troubling storm roots, laid firmly beneath sturdy stems, reaching skyward, aspiring unbroken daylight steadfastly. Welcomed warmly, claimed, embracing, loved, hopes intertwined, sheltered.